So since the release of Tears of the Kingdom, I've been playing this game a lot in a not so healthy way. Like I wake up, I play Tears of the Kingdom, I went to sleep. That's it. And man, what an amazing game. Tears of the Kingdom is awesome. You have so many new mechanics, such a fun combat, and a lot of things to do. It's definitely one of the best games I ever played. However, after playing the game for so many hours, I think I came to the conclusion that Tears of the Kingdom is not good as Breath of the Wild. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Tears of the Kingdom does improve in a lot of aspects of Breath of the Wild. Like the dungeons, for example, now they are more different visually. The bosses also has a lot more variety than before. You have a lot more cool missions with NPCs. There's a lot of things that this game does great. But Breath of the Wild still feels more polished and well thought out. And today I wanted to explain why I think that. The first thing that I think Breath of the Wild does better is the powers that you get from the dungeons. In Breath of the Wild, when you finish a dungeon, you get a really cool power from the champions. And you get that power as a reward. In Tears of the Kingdom, you have something similar. On this game, you get these partners that can help you, the sages. Now, there's a few problems with this. First of all, they are very complicated to use. One really cool thing about the champions' powers is that they are very simple. They're fast and very effective to use. They're simple because they were incorporated into the combat mechanics. Like, if you want to use the Rook's protection, well, you just use the shield and done. If you want to use Urbolsa's Fury, you just use the spinning attack and done. You can use these powers with a simple press of a button. On Tears of the Kingdom, for the other hand, you have to look for your partner and press A. Then you have to aim and then finally use it. All of those steps make the combat very janky and unpleasant. Also, I lost a lot of opportunities to use them. In a lot of moments I wanted to use Riju's lightning on some enemy, but she wasn't around. Or I did talk to her, but in the middle of the loading she was attacked or something, and then I lose the power. And the same thing happens with the other ones. They're so inconvenient to use. The only one that kinda works for me is Tulin, cause you usually can activate him just clicking A twice while flying. So that's good job Tulin. But another problem with these partners is that they feel ineffective. In Breath of the Wild, when you get a power like that, you feel so freaking powerful. Urbolsa's Fury could destroy everything around you, basically. The Rook's protection actually helped you in a lot of situations. Mipha is kinda silly, she can basically do what Fairies does, but she still feels very useful sometimes. And man, Rivoli's Gale was the best. It was one of those mechanics that totally changed how you traversal the world. Tears of the Kingdom though, well, the Goro can explode things. That's cool. I mean, I have a bombs that can also do that, but whatever. And also Riju is also essentially the same thing. You aim and then explode something. Sidon is the most useless one. You just use this shit in a dungeon and never again, because his attack is not effective, and also the shield that he gives to you doesn't last that long. So he's kinda useless. And the robot is cool, I guess, but that also doesn't do anything meaningful. It doesn't change your gameplay in any way, because literally everything he does, you can already do by simply fusing a Zonai weapon to your shield or something. Also, I can do a much cooler robot. Look at that! Woo! Die! I'm invincible! So they all feel meaningless. Even Tulin, that is very helpful, feels a little useless since you can already build a flying machine anyway. So they're all very cool characters, but I don't know, they just don't feel like much. On Breath of the Wild though, every power that you get actually changes the way you play the game. The simplicity also makes them so much more pleasant to use. So the champion's power, in my opinion, is definitely better than the powers that you get in Tears of the Kingdom. Another thing that Breath of the Wild did better, in my opinion, is how the world and the missions work together. Allow me to explain. No, in Breath of the Wild, you have one map, and that map has everything. You feel like you're always in the right place, simply because everywhere you go, you can find something to do. You see something in the distance, you go there, you do the mission, and that's it. Exploring this world feels natural because there's no limitation. There is no right order to do things. On Tears of the Kingdom though, it's a little bit different. Basically because now we have 3 maps. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but the way that they divided the missions is a little weird because now everything actually important happens on the skies or on the depths. So you're gonna go to a place just so the characters can tell you that you have to go to another place. On Breath of the Wild, you got to a place and the mission kinda plays in that same region. In Tears of the Kingdom though, it's different. There was 2 moments in my playthrough that I was in a wrong place. There was one moment that I found this robot on the depths, but unlike Breath of the Wild that I always had something to do, I couldn't do anything in this place. I spent like an hour trying to find out what exactly I had to do here, and nothing. That's because the game wanted me to go to another place first to get something and then do the thing that I wanted to do in the first place. And that sucks, man, because there's a few moments in this game where you're gonna get the realization that, oh, I wasn't supposed to be here yet. The game has an order to do things. And that's so freaking stupid. I mean, if this was Breath of the Wild, I would just find this robot and build it right there, at that moment. But no, Tears of the Kingdom has 3 maps. So it's basically gonna force you to explore these 3 maps in the right way that the game wants you to. Now, this is not a big problem, especially because that's how older Zelda games are. However, what made Breath of the Wild special was that sense of I can go anywhere I want. On Tears of the Kingdom, you can't go anywhere you want. I mean, you can, but you're gonna find some places with absolutely nothing to do because the game doesn't want you to be there yet. The 3 maps formula is something I didn't like, honestly. I mean, it was cool in the beginning when I discovered the underworld for the first time. But now it feels like every map doesn't have the chance to shine. The Depths, for example, has 2 dungeons and 3 cool missions with the Iga clan. And the rest of the things are just copy and paste enemies and places and some treasure chests. On the surface, you basically just have NPC missions. Nothing actually important happens here. And the skies have a lot of island, but they feel so empty. You're gonna find 2 dungeons here and some shrines in the sky, but still, they feel like nothing. There's a lot of copy and paste island, to the point that I actually got lost in a few moments, like, oh, I was already here? Oh no, there's an exactly same island just like this one, okay. There's also a bunch of abandoned mines on the depths, pretty much the same, just copy and paste over and over again, where you do the same thing. And that's so stupid. Come on, there's islands here that there's nothing. There's islands that we're gonna find a chest, telling you where to find another chest. It's like, what the hell is this? It's the most stupid thing ever. Really, you get so happy, oh my god, a chest! And then you find it, it's like, oh, there's just a map for another chest in another place. That's cool. I mean, I don't know why the item couldn't be there already, but ugh, whatever. Now, I'm not saying that the game does not have content. This game has a lot of things to do. I think maybe even more than Breath of the Wild. But I'm just saying that the game would be a lot better if all of those missions was in just one map. Can you imagine how much better Tears of the Kingdom would be if every content on those 3 maps was in just one? That would make the world so much more rich and alive. That would also make the exploration more simple. You would never feel like, oh, you're in the wrong place. First you have to do that thing and then come here. It's like, oh, come on. You also would find less empty spaces on the map. There's a lot of places in the depths that there's nothing. It's just a big empty space. I think Breath of the Wild is better in that regard because they just have one map, so everywhere you go, you're gonna find something for you to do. You're gonna find important things, some more simple missions as well, and that's it. Tears of the Kingdom is a lot bigger than Breath of the Wild, but I don't think that necessarily makes the exploration better. I think the other thing I don't like much about Tears of the Kingdom is that the game is complicated. On Tears of the Kingdom, you can basically do everything that was present on Breath of the Wild, and that's a good thing. But everything now is more complex in a way. Like the powers of the sages that I mentioned earlier. The power is a lot more complicated to use compared to the champion's powers. I mean, remember Revolted Gale? That was pretty cool, right? Well, now you can also use the shield and the rocket to achieve a similar effect. But to do that, you have to open your menu, take out a rocket, use the fuse ability, fuse with the shield, and then finally fly. On Breath of the Wild, you just hold the jump button. That's it. So this is just an example, but basically everything in Tears of the Kingdom is more complicated. You can use fire arrows, but now I have to open the menu and attach some material to the arrow every single time. You can make ice platforms, but you have to make a weapon or an arrow to do that. On Breath of the Wild, everything is more convenient. You always have what you need in your hands. It feels like you have those mechanics on the game, and the world is just this playground for you to play with these mechanics. If you found a frozen lake or some mud, no problem. I have the tools in my hands to fix that problem. On Tears of the Kingdom, you have to create your tools, basically. And that's not a bad thing, but compared to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom feels a little slower. You basically have to stop your progress to build something to get to a place all the time. You want to get to that island? Well, let's build a flying machine and then go there. Now, there is tools that makes it easier, like the auto build, so that's pretty nice. Also, I recognize that this is going to be something more subjective. I think a lot of people are going to prefer the ability to create what you need, but for me, I prefer the Breath of the Wild approach, where the game gives you a bunch of these cool Sheikah's Blade mechanics, and then they create a bunch of opportunities for you to use those tools in the world. I think it's a lot better to have what you need in your hands, because that makes the game more convenient and fun to traversal. Feels like the world was designed around these mechanics that you have, and everything feels more natural. Another thing that I liked more about Breath of the Wild is the difficulty. I remember I died so many times in that game, and there's a lot of reasons for that. First, because in the beginning of the game you just have 3 hearts and less weapons, but also because everything was new for you. Every enemy that you found, you had to basically learn how to fight them. I remember the first time I found the Stone Talus. It was freaking awesome, and later in the game I found a Lino, and I was like, what the hell is that? In the desert when I found a Molduga, it was so freaking cool. Tears of the Kingdom unfortunately reuses the same enemies from the first game. Now, the game does have a few new enemies, but they are a minority compared to the others from Breath of the Wild. And that's not only a problem for the exploration, but I think that also affects the difficulty as well. One of the things that made Breath of the Wild challenging is that the fact that you had to learn how to fight with those enemies. On Tears of the Kingdom, every time I find a Lino, I just defeat the guy in like a few minutes. There's no challenge anymore, because I already fought that guy 100 times on Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild already had a problem of repeating the enemies, but at least in the first, 10 hours of the game, you were still getting surprised by some stuff. But now on Tears of the Kingdom, basically every enemy is the same. Even cool new enemies like the 3-head dragon feels old after the 3rd time you fight them. Can you imagine how much more cool Tears of the Kingdom would be if every enemy was new? Even changing the skin would already be something, but no, most of the times you're going to find the same bokoblin on Breath of the Wild. And that makes the exploration kinda boring because you don't get surprised anymore. Another thing that I think Breath of the Wild did better was the boss fights. Now, visually, Tears of the Kingdom is a lot better. The bosses are different and creative. In Breath of the Wild, they are the same robot monster every time. However, when it comes to the fight itself, I think Breath of the Wild did a much better job. Tears of the Kingdom fights are cool, but they are too simple. Basically, every boss just wait there for you to attack them. They never do anything interesting. Every boss in Tears of the Kingdom basically just shoots some stuff at you, and that's it. Look at Kogera. Kogera is my favorite boss in this game, and even him just basically fly around, just waiting for you to attack it. All of those bosses in this game are so freaking easy. Breath of the Wild though?
This thing is fast. Watch yourself.
The battle was so freaking epic. The bosses had more of an offense. They were always attacking you. The 2 phases was also more distinct from each other. They were not very hard, but they were definitely more challenging compared to Tears of the Kingdom. Also, you had more freedom in the bosses in Breath of the Wild. On Tears of the Kingdom, you had the sages before the boss, and you're kinda required to use them in a boss fight. On Breath of the Wild though, everything you used was the abilities you already had in your inventory. The battle felt more real, just 2 warriors using their best abilities on each other. Anyway, I think that's what I had to say about this. I love Tears of the Kingdom. I think this is a great game, and the new mechanics can allow for some really fun stuff. But I don't know, I just think looking back, Breath of the Wild was a game that I had a lot more fun playing it. And although Tears of the Kingdom does improve in a lot of aspects of Breath of the Wild, I still think Breath of the Wild is generally a better game. Anyway, let me know in the comments what game do you prefer and tell me why do you prefer that game. And yeah, thank you for watching and I see you in the next video.